This example will demonstrate why methods are a good thing and help to simplify code. So here I have a really simple class. It is summing numbers from start to end, and it's doing it for 3 different ranges of value. The first loop sums all the numbers from 1 to 10 and then prints the sum. The next loop prints all the numbers from 20 to 30 and then prints their sum. The third loop prints all the numbers from 35 to 45 and then prints the sum. If you look at this carefully, I am simply just repeating code over and over and over again. So if I wanted, for example, to print the sum from 50 to 100, I would copy this code and change the begin and end values to 50 to 100 and do the same here. But it's sort of silly to keep repeating code. If I have an error, let's say in the piece that I copied, the error would be repeated everywhere where I paste it. So a better way to do this would be to define a method that would take as input the beginning and ending value for the loop, and use that one method or call that one method over and over again to do work on our behalf from the main method. From 1231, you may remember that a method is a group of statements that are given a name, they're combined into one unit, if you want to think of it that way, and they usually do some function for the program. I'm going to make a method header right now. The method header is the start of the definition of a method. One thing to remember when you're defining methods is that a method cannot be defined inside another method. So usually I will go to the first curly brace, find its pair, and give myself space for the method header. This method I'm going to call print sum, since that is what the loop is doing. First I'm going to put keywords in that hopefully you remember. Public is the same keyword, and we'll talk about the access modifiers later on, but for now everything we're doing will be public. Since we're calling this method from main, and main is a static method, we're going to have to use the keyword static, and later on we'll talk about static in more detail. This method is not going to return a value. It is just simply going to do some work for me, and it's going to end. If you remember from 1231, we used the keyword void to identify a method that did not return a value, just did some work and then stopped. I'm calling the method printSum, and I'm using the naming conventions for methods that are acceptable in Java. The first letter is usually lowercase. If the method name consists of more than one name, the second word in the name is in uppercase, and this is called camel case, like the humps of a camel. Inside the begin and end parentheses, if the method needs some input value, this is where you would define the variables that will contain the input values. Ours has to have 2 integers. One is the starting value for the sum, and the other one is the ending value. So I'm going to call these start num for the starting number, and end num for the ending number. I try to pick variable names that are descriptive of what the variables are. Inside this method, I am going to copy and paste this particular piece of code, which is the very first loop, and the definition of the variable sum used to add all the numbers together. I'm going to copy the code, and I'm going to put it inside the method. Notice that I typed in an end curly brace, but Eclipse is giving me one. So in essence, I have a duplicate, and it will give me a compiler error if I do that. So I just deleted one. Start num is the starting value for the loop. The code that I copied always started the loop at 1, but I don't want to start at 1. I want to start at whatever value is in start num. And before I was stopping at 10. But now I want to stop at whatever value is at end num. So I'm going to replace 10 with end num. and everything else in this loop is going to stay the same. However, the print statement I want to be not from 1 to 10, but from whatever start num is to whatever end num is. So I'm going to replace 1 with start num. And I'm just going to reformat this print statement. Instead of 10, I wanted to say end num. And everything else is pretty much going to stay the same. So now instead of saying the sum from 1 to 10 is whatever the sum is, it is going to say the sum from the value of start num to the value of end num is sum. So this is pretty good, except if you remember, when you write a method doesn't run just because you wrote it, right? So if I was to run this program right now, what is actually running are these print statements, these loop statements I'm printing from up here. So I want to change the main method so that it calls print sum instead of running these loops. So the first group of statements used to print the sum from 1 to 10. But now I want to call the method print sum, and I want to pass it the starting and ending value. And now I can replace that first loop. I'm going to delete these statements and in its place call the method and pass it the values 20 to 30. And I'm going to do the same for the last group. So what will happen now? As you may remember, the main method is the start of the program. The statements in main will run sequentially. When this first statement runs print sum 1 to 10, the value of 1 will get copied into start num. The value of 10 will be copied into end num. And then the statements inside print sum will run and print the sum from 1 to 10. When that has been completed, control will return to this statement right here. The method print sum will be called. The value 20 will be copied into start num. The value 30 will be copied into end num. And now this code will run and it will print the sum from 20 to 30. And lastly, the same thing will happen when this statement executes, except now start num will have 35 and end num will have 45. So let's run this, and there we go. The sum from 1 to 10, the sum from 20 to 30, the sum from 35 to 45. If you can see, those loops are no longer repeated. My code is a lot smaller. The logic to print the sum is in one place, and instead of repeating the code, I simply call the method. Having a method in your code is like having your friend's contact information in your phone. Unless you call the number, you're not going to talk to your friend. This is absolutely the same. If you don't call the method print sum, it will not run. That's it. Thank you.